Hello my dear 8th standard children, welcome back to our second part of circulatory system. So, in your biology, your circulatory system, your 6th chapter is about circulatory system. So, you learned in the previous session about the pacemaker, that is the SA node, which is also called as sinoatrial node. So, the sinoatrial node acts as an impulse that receives the impulses and it helps in working of the heartbeat. So, thereby the SA node passes the information, it acts as a relaying node. Okay. So, that is what you have learned about the pacemaker, which is also called as pacemaker, right. So, today in this session, in your second part, you are going to learn about the structure of the heart. So, we know that the circulatory system consists of heart, blood vessels and blood, right. So, the heart is a pumping organ and it is a muscular organ, conical shaped organ which is present in our chest region, right. So, this heart externally it is covered with a covering which is known as pericardium, right. And in between the heart and the pericardium, the space is filled with a pericardial fluid. So, the pericardial fluid acts as a shock absorber, right. And when we look inside the heart is divided into 4 chambers. So, the upper chambers are called as atria or we can also call it as auricles, okay. And the lower chambers we call it as ventricles, okay. And this auricles and ventricles we have right side as well as left side. So, the auricle that is present in the right side is known as right auricle or right atrium, and the atrium that is present in the left, it is known as left atrium, and the ventricle that is present in the right is known as right ventricle, and the ventricle that is present in the left is known as left ventricle. So, inside the heart, the right part of the heart receives the deoxygenated blood from all the parts of our body. So, what is deoxygenated blood? So, the blood does not have oxygen. So, that blood is taken from all the parts of our body into the right atrium. So, through a blood vessel which is known as superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. So, here you can see this blood vessel. So, this is known as superior vena cava. So, the superior vena cava brings all the deoxygenated blood from the upper part of our body, right. And the inferior vena cava brings all the deoxygenated blood from the lower part of our body. So, thereby the 2 blood vessels pouring the deoxygenated blood into a chamber which is known as right atrium. Clear? So, when the right atrium contracts, the blood, the deoxygenated blood is sent into the right ventricle. So, this is right ventricle. So, in between the right atrium and right ventricle, there is a valve that is present between it. So, this valve we call it as tricuspid valve. So, through the tricuspid valve, the blood enters into the right ventricle. So, what is the main function of the valve? The valve helps in preventing the backflow of blood, right. So, once the blood enters into the right ventricle, when the right ventricle contracts, you know the heart is contracting and relaxation muscles, right, will be present. So, contraction and relaxation of the muscles inside the heart will be taking place. So, when the ventricle contracts, the blood from the right ventricle, the deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle is pushes through a blood vessel which is known as pulmonary vein. So, this is known as pulmonary artery. So, this blood vessel is known as pulmonary artery. So, through the pulmonary artery, the deoxygenated blood is taken from the right ventricle into your lungs. So, this blood vessel that connects the right ventricle and the lungs is known as pulmonary artery. So, even in the pulmonary artery, there will be a valve is present. So, this valve we call it as pulmonary valve or pulmonary artery valve or pulmonary valve. So, the pulmonary valve is present inside the pulmonary artery. Even the pulmonary valve prevents the backflow of blood. So, once the blood, deoxygenated blood goes into the lungs, there with the help of respiration process we take in oxygen, right. So, the oxygen enters into the blood through the alveoli and thereby the blood is oxygenated. So, in the lungs the deoxygenated blood is getting oxygenated and the oxygenated blood from the lungs is taken back into your heart through a blood vessel which is known as pulmonary vein. So, this is the pulmonary vein. So, the pulmonary vein, so this is the pulmonary vein. So, the pulmonary vein brings back the oxygenated blood from the lungs into the heart, mainly into the chamber which is known as left atrium. So, inside the left atrium, the oxygenated blood is taken from the lungs and poured into the left atrium. When the left atrium contracts, the blood enters into the left ventricle. So, this is left ventricle. So, in the left ventricle, the blood, oxygenated blood from the left atrium enters into the left ventricle, and in between the left atrium and left ventricle there is a valve that is present. So, that valve is known as mitral valve, or we can say bicuspid valve. So, a bicuspid valve, or we can also call it as mitral valve. So, here the valve also help in preventing the backflow of blood, right. When the ventricle, this left ventricle contracts, the blood from the left ventricle, the oxygenated blood from the left ventricle enters into a blood vessel which is known as aorta. So, this is aorta. So, from here the blood enters into the aorta. So, here in the aorta also there is a valve that is present. So, this valve is known as aortic valve. So, here you can see a valve. So, this valve is known as aortic valve. So, with the help of aortic valve, the blood will not be backflowing. So, again the oxygenated blood is sent through the aorta, and from aorta the oxygenated blood is passed, is transported to all the parts of our body. So, through aorta the blood, the oxygenated blood is sent to all the parts of our body, right. So, this is what the function is happening inside the heart. So, the valve that is present between the auricle and the ventricle is known as atrioventricular septum, or we can say, and then the part that separates the auricle and ventricle we call it as septum. Okay. So, interauricular septum, where the septum that separates the auricle, and interventricular septum where the septum separates the ventricles, right. So, this is what about the function of the heart. Now, let us see about the circulation of the heart. So, the circulation of the heart, as it receives the blood 2 times from the body, the blood is received into the heart, and from the lungs the blood is received into the heart. So, the circulation is happening twice. So, that is why this circulation we call it as double circulation. So, this we call it as double circulation. So, what is double circulation? So, double circulation is nothing but which includes 2 circulation. One is pulmonary circulation, The other one is systemic circulation. So this is what about two circulations that is happening. Right. Now first, where the deoxygenated blood, from where the deoxygenated blood is entering into the heart. So from the all the body parts, right. So here that circulation we call it as systemic circulation. From the body parts, from all the body parts, the deoxygenated blood. So deoxygenated blood is entering into the right atrium, and from the right atrium the deoxygenated blood is entering into the right ventricle. So through the tricuspid valve. Okay. So from the right ventricle the deoxygenated blood is entering into the lungs. Clear? And from the lungs the deoxygenated blood is entered, right. So from the right ventricle the deoxygenated blood is entering into the lungs through the blood vessel which is known as pulmonary artery. Okay. Again from the lungs the oxygenated blood is entering into the left atrium. So through pulmonary vein. Okay. And from the left atrium the oxygenated blood is entering into the left ventricle through bicuspid valve. And from the left ventricle the oxygenated blood is taken to all the parts of our body through the aorta. So this circulation is what happening inside the heart. So here from the left ventricle and the oxygenated blood is entering into the body parts, right. And from the body parts the deoxygenated blood is entering into the right atrium. So this circulation we call it as systemic circulation. Okay. And the deoxygenated blood from right ventricle it enters into the lungs through pulmonary artery, and again from the lungs the oxygenated blood is entering into the left atrium through pulmonary vein. So this circulation we call it as pulmonary circulation. So this circulation we call it as pulmonary circulation, right. So now let us see clearly. So now let us see. So pulmonary circulation is nothing but from the right ventricle, the deoxygenated blood enters to the lungs through pulmonary artery. And again from the lungs the oxygenated blood enters into the heart through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. So this circulation we call it as pulmonary circulation. And what is systemic circulation? So from the left ventricle through aorta the oxygenated blood is entering into the body parts. And from the body parts through superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, the deoxygenated blood is entering into the right atrium. Okay. So, this circulation we call it as systemic circulation. So, now you understood the two types of circulation, right. So, this is pulmonary circulation. So, pulmonary circulation is nothing but the blood vessels or the circulation of blood between the heart and the lungs. So, that circulation we call it as pulmonary circulation. So, the pulmonary artery is taking the deoxygenated blood to the lungs and the pulmonary vein is taking the oxygenated blood into the heart. So, this circulation we call it as pulmonary circulation. And what is systemic circulation? So, systemic circulation is nothing but the circulation of blood between the heart and the body parts. So, those are called as systemic circulation. So, here in the systemic circulation, the oxygenated blood from the heart, from the left ventricle, it is taken through all the parts of our body through the aorta, and from again all the parts of our body, the deoxygenated blood is taken into the heart through the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. So, this circulation we call it as systemic circulation. So, here you can see the aorta is taking the oxygenated blood to all the parts of our body, including the organs and legs, hands and all, stomach, kidney. So, all the parts of our body, the aorta is taking the oxygenated blood. So, this circulation we call it as systemic circulation. So, this combination of two circulation of the circulation of blood that is happening between the heart and the lungs, and again from the heart to all the parts of our body, between the heart and the parts of our body. So, together we call it as double circulation. So, this is known as double circulation. Right. So, today in this class you have learned about the structure of heart and the functions of heart, right. So, you have learned about the functions of the heart, and you also learned what is double circulation and what is pulmonary circulation and what is systemic circulation. So, this pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation is your 5-mark question, right. So, go through the lesson, go through the given video. So, once you are thorough with that, take your self-assessment and do the self-assessment. So, once you do the self-assessment, you will come to know how far you have understood about the circulatory system. So, hope with the next part, I will meet you with a new topic about the circulatory system. So, thank you for watching. Have a great day.